Hi everyone, my name is Samantha Metheny. I'm a Deputy Fire Marshal with Medford Fire Rescue. I'm also the public educator for our fire department, and today we're going to be talking about our hazard house. If you want to take a look at it, you can see that this hazard house is full of problems, lots and lots of problems. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through each space, right? The garage and the office and the kitchen, and we're going to look at all these problems, and then we're going to figure out how to solve them and why it's so important that we do. I'd like to explain a little bit about my role as a deputy fire marshal. A deputy fire marshal has multiple responsibilities, and for me, part of my responsibility is that I'm a fire investigator. So my job is to go in after a fire is out and to figure out how and where that fire started, and is there anything we could do to prevent that fire from happening in the future. As a fire educator, my job is to come in and teach all sorts of classes. I teach home fire safety, I teach CPR, hands-only CPR, I talk about fire extinguisher use for businesses. I do a lot, and I do education for all ages, from the very little to our much older. So I'm kind of everywhere, and I'm doing what I can to keep our community safe. Another thing that I'm responsible for is inspections, right? So I go out and I do business inspections. I go out to Lowe's, I go out to the restaurants, and we make sure that those places are as fire safe as possible. So they have working smoke detectors, they have fire extinguisher systems in place, like hood systems for the restaurants and things like that. But those are all commercial buildings, right? Those are all for the public. But there's one place where I don't get to go and do inspections regularly. That place, of course, would be your private homes. And it doesn't mean that we don't want you to be fire safe at home, it just means that that's your private space, right? So what we're doing today is we're going to talk about some of those things that you can do at home to keep your home as safe as possible, because that's where you spend most of your time, right? And especially where you sleep. Today, we're going to pretend like this is our home, right? And I know that not everybody has a 2-story house or even a 3-story with a basement, right? Not everybody has fireplaces in their house or their laundry room in their garage. But for the sake of what we're doing today, we're just going to roll with this. I'm going to invite you into my house, and we're going to go figure out how to make this house much safer. We're going to start right here in the garage. And the only problem is we really can't pull into this garage very well because all of our stuff is all over the ground, right? And it's pretty unsafe. When we think about like pulling into a garage and we think about that hot exhaust, right, on the back of the car, if we bumped into any of these things like the linseed oil, the gasoline, right, those are all things that could start a fire and can contribute to the growth of a fire. What if we bumped this propane tank into these open flames there, which would be the pilot light for maybe a heater here? So these are all things that we think should maybe get put up and away so that they don't have the potential for getting knocked over or bumped up against something that would be hot. So we recommend putting things like this maybe in a little fuel storage or a little shed away from where it would be attached to the house, right? So we would put this away. And the gasoline too, we would like to keep those away, especially when we have a garage attached to a house. These could maybe go up on a shelf, but for now we're going to put these all away. And we're going to tidy this up so it looks like that. And that's much cleaner, right? So now we can pull into our garage and we don't have any big problems to run into. Now I don't know if you noticed how those went from orange flames to blue flames, but when we see orange flames on equipment like a heater, right? This would be a hot water heater. This would be a heater for maybe the house. It would be gas fueled. When we see gas like this and flames like that, it may look pretty for a campfire, but in a home appliance like this, it means that it's not running efficiently, and so it's releasing carbon monoxide and smoke, and it's not burning cleanly. We want it to burn clean like that. So the best thing to do would be to call a maintenance person to come out and work on your pieces of equipment that are burning like that. Same thing here with a gas powered dryer. We don't see many of those, but they're out there. We want to see a blue flame. Now let's talk about the washer and the dryer. I have a rule in my house as far as whenever we change laundry from the washing machine and we put it into the dryer and we run a load, we're gonna empty out all those clothes from the dryer. We gotta put another load in, but there's something we have to check every single time we go to do that. That would be the dryer vent. And the reason why we wanna check the dryer vent is because it will build up lint. And if we don't get the lint buildup out, it makes the whole drum and everything super hot and we can have a fire. Now, these fires are pretty easy to prevent, I think, if we just did regular routine maintenance after every single dryer load. Cleaning out that dryer vent, pulling out that extra towel that's in there with all the lint, and putting that in the trash. We'd be ready for the next load and we can reduce the risk of fire. Okay, so right now, if you can see there's a little boy and he's hiding in the closet. And one of the things that gets my attention right away is the fact that he's hiding in the closet, meaning he probably knows he's doing something he shouldn't be doing, right? And what he has in his hands right there, if you can see, he has matches. Now, matches and lighters are used to start fires. And in my opinion, our students don't need to be starting fires for any reason at all, unless they're with mom and dad and they're under their watch, and that's part of what you're doing for birthday cakes or whatever. But as a rule, you never want to touch matches and lighters, right? The best thing you could do is to give those to an adult. Give them to a grown-up, give them to your bus driver, give them to just a trusted adult so that we're not tempted to misuse those. In this situation, this young man's down there in the closet, and the problem with being down here, and the thing about matches or lighters or in an area where other things could catch on fire, is that fire builds and grows very, very quickly. And we think we can control it maybe because we've seen the candles get blown out, and we've been at a campfire and it's all fairly contained. The problem is when we have fire outside of an area like that that's protected with a fire ring or a screen over it or something like that, is that, you know, we put out a little piece of paper and we tap it out, but that when we're tapping it out like that, we could spread an ember. And that ember could catch another fire, and then pretty soon you're putting your hands out and you can't keep up with all the fire as it's building because it's so unpredictable and it builds so quickly. And what we really don't want is there to be a fire in your house ever, if we could possibly avoid it. And one of the ways we can avoid that is to just not be messing around with matches or lighters. Make sure you hand those to an adult. So we're gonna move over here into this office space. Now, generally, an office space is very often like an extra bedroom that's been converted into an office space. And it can be used for a sleeping area. And the reason why it can be used as a sleeping area is because most of them will have two ways out of the room. You always have to have a way out being a door, which would be your primary way out, and a window, which would be your secondary way out. So this would make an okay sleeping area. But for now, it's somebody's office. So let's take a look at some of the things they have in this office that we can make a little bit better. First of all, I see a young man, and he has a gun in his hand. Now, the rule is you should always assume that a gun is loaded, and we should never, ever touch them. So if we see a gun, say we're going over to visit a family member, right, and there happens to be a gun sitting on the table, what you don't want to do is pick that gun up and say, here, could you put this away? You want to leave it right on the table, go tell an adult, and ask them to please put it away for you. Don't ever touch the gun, leave it right where it is, and ask a grown-up to help you with that. We have to assume they're loaded. So let's make sure that all of our guns and weapons like that are safely locked up. I think that looks much better. Let's talk about this outlet right here. This is so common to see in offices, even sometimes around our bedside tables, right? We need all these extra plugs for our lamps and for our cell phone chargers, for our computers and alarm clocks. And what we can do is we can really easily overload this outlet because it's asking too much of it, right? We're trying to use too much power, and we can have a failure, right? We can overload that circuit, causing sparks like that, which can also create a fire. So the safer thing to do would be to use what we call a power strip like that. You know, the white strip or a black strip, it has multiple plugs in it. That is a much safer way to use that, because if something were to fail, right, like say this computer or this lamp, something had a problem, it would switch off right at that power strip and not go all the way back to the wall. Much safer way of handling that. Now let's talk about the bars on windows. Not something we see here very often in Medford, which is awesome. We live in a really nice, safe community. But should you ever visit a location in maybe a bigger city where you find this, bars on windows are designed to keep bad guys from getting in, not you from getting out. So they will always have some sort of a lever or something, or a button that you can push that will open up those bars and let you out. So if you have bars on windows like that, say in a lower level hotel room or something like that, or a friend's house that you're staying at for somebody's wedding, for instance, and you find that, look for the lever so that you can get out safely. All right, now we're moving into the kitchen. And the kitchen has a lot of things going on it right now. First, let's talk about this gal with the chemicals underneath the sink. A lot of times we store our cleaning materials and things like that under the kitchen sink, right? It's handy to get to. But if we have little ones in our house living with us, right? The way I think about it is our little ones like to explore our world with their hands, right? And their mouth. So making sure that things like this are locked up and in a cabinet away where little hands and curious mouths could get hurt or accidentally ingest some of that so that it would poison you. The best thing we could do is to lock that up, right? We want to put like those child safety locks on, put those, maybe take them from under the kitchen cabinet and put them up in a higher shelf where you can't get to it easily. But somehow protect our little ones from chemicals and dangerous substances like that by locking them up and putting them away. Okay, so in a kitchen, first of all, a national statistic, right? We got to throw some numbers out there for you. And it's actually also true for Jackson County, and that is that our number one cause of home fires is unattended cooking fires. It's the most common cause of fires across the country. And the reason for that is that, we're cooking with heat, right? That everything we do has heat applied to that. And if we're not paying attention to what we do, we walk out of the kitchen, we get distracted with a phone call, or watching our favorite show or whatever it is, and we're not setting timers and things like that. It continues to heat, boils off whatever water is in the pot or whatever it is, and then superheats that pan, can cause a fire. Just a very common thing, but a very preventable thing as well. So let's talk about some of the things we can do with the kitchen. First of all, it's always a good idea to not keep things that are flammable anywhere near your cooking surface. In this situation, right, they put their paper towels right above the stove, right? Maybe pretty handy, but probably not the smartest choice of place to locate that. So it's a good idea to just keep your things that could catch on fire away from the cooktops, meaning even oven mitts and things like that. Keep them away on the countertop so that they can't slide over right onto that heater or the cooktop here. Because even if it's off, it could still have enough heat to start something on fire, especially something light like paper. Now, in this kitchen, I don't know if you've noticed, but that pot handle is sticking out. We don't really like pot handles sticking out for the very reason that they could easily get knocked over, right? Little curious hands might reach up and grab it, and we don't want anything hot, right, spilling down onto somebody or getting caught on your sleeve or anything like that. So the safest thing to do is to turn your pot handles in. Okay, so we talked a little bit about cooking fires, right? So let's say you actually have a fire on your stove, right? So let's say, here's the scenario, you're getting oil hot to cook fajitas, right? The phone rings, you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't talked to my son in forever, and I'm gonna go grab that phone, and you forget to turn the heat off, but this continues to build. Now you are like, oh my gosh, you smell the smoke, you run into the kitchen, and you see this, right? Well, maybe just the stuff in the pot is on fire. So the thing you could do, which is the safest thing possible, is to put a lid on it, right? And we're gonna just put the lid on it. And what we're doing by putting a lid on it is we're suffocating the fire, meaning we're taking the oxygen away from the fire so it can't continue to grow. Fire needs three things. It needs heat, right? So we've got plenty of heat on the stove. It needs fuel, whatever's inside that pan would be the fuel, and it needs oxygen. That would be the air that's open. We take one of those pieces away from that triangle, right? And we break the triangle and we put out that fire. In the bathroom. And here's our guy. He's taking a bubble bath, right? Like, how awesome is that? I mean, I could never get bubbles that big. I love this bath. But this guy is taking this awesome bath, but he wants to jam out to some tunes, which I think is totally fine. It's fun to rock out in the bath or the shower, right? But what he's doing here is he's kind of making a big mistake, right? He's reaching for that radio. And is that a good idea or a bad idea? I say it's a bad idea. And the reason why I say that's a bad idea is because water and electricity don't mix, right? If this were to fall in, that could really cause this guy some problems, right? So let's see what happens if he's reaching up here, right? Yikes. That would be really bad. He'd have a terrible day. So let's remove temptation. It's one thing to have music in your bathroom and listening to it, but it's another to have it someplace where it could actually fall in and cause you serious harm. So make sure you, let's say there's another half of this bathroom here, right? Maybe there's a counter. Go ahead, set the radio where you like it, and get over here in the bath, but don't mix the two, okay? And for the same reason, right, we have this hair dryer here, right? That could slip into the sink. Again, we could have another electrocution type problem there, which would be not good. Here's somebody making a really poor mistake, right? A very poor choice as far as putting something that's very hot like that curling iron on something flammable like the towel. So let's use those countertops on the other side where they're away from these types of risks. Okay. I'm going to show you something in here because somebody once asked me, what happens if I hear my smoke alarm going off and I'm in the bathroom and it's too smoky for me to go out the door and I want to just stay right where I'm at? Well, here's something that you could do. You could open up your window here and you could put a towel out the window. And what that says is to firefighters everywhere. It's a universal symbol, meaning firefighters everywhere. If they're going around and they're walking around your whole house like we always do when we arrive to a house for a fire, for a call of a fire, we see a towel and there's smoke coming out of other windows or eaves of the house, and we see a towel in the window, we're going to get on the radio and we're going to tell the next crew coming in, hey, we need to get a ladder to the backside of this house or wherever, to this window at this location. We may have a rescue, and we will send people to that location. So this is a universal symbol to firefighters everywhere that somebody needs help. And that's what you can do. We're here in the living room, and today we're looking at this fireplace, right? And I see a few things that are a problem with this particular fireplace. One of them is that there's just fire, right? And I don't think of too many places where you have just an open fireplace like that. It's just really not safe. And one of the bigger concerns right now is that we've got this carpet out in front, which if there was a fire ember, right, like if you go to a campfire and you hear it snap, crackle, pop, and you see a little ember land outside of it, it could land on this carpet, catching that on fire. So although it's cozy and nice, probably not the best place to store your carpets or rugs, right, to keep them there in front of your fireplace. And the way we could prevent those fire embers from landing and jumping out of the fire is to always put a screen over your fireplace. So if you have to add logs to it, fine, add logs to it, but go ahead and put the screen right back, because this screen right here helps reduce the amount of fire embers that can actually escape. So it's a much, much safer way of having a wood-burning fireplace in your house. Okay, now let's talk about this guy over here in the corner. You know, in my opinion, he's making several mistakes. First of all, I'm not a big fan of smoking at all. And I'm not a fan of smoking in a house. And the third thing that he's doing is he's fallen asleep with a lit cigarette in his hand. So this is just a bad scenario altogether. Now, for this guy, let's pretend like there's a doorway right here. Like this is his doorway out, right? So let's say he's fallen asleep. He's got this lit cigarette in his hand. and it starts maybe some papers on fire next to his chair there. Now, it's possible that he hears this. It's a smoke detector, right? And it's telling him to get out. I'm going to turn it off just because it's loud. It's telling him to get out, right? When you hear a smoke detector going off like that, it is a signal, it is a call to action. You need to get up, you need to get out of your house. And if there's smoke, you need to get low. So let's say he wants to go out this door, but it's not a safe way for him to go because there's too much fire here. So instead of getting up high, right, and standing up, he could potentially take a big breath of this smoke, and he doesn't want to do that, right? So he wants to get down low. He wants to get down on his hands and knees and crawl out to his window. This is important to do because as you can see how the smoke is filling up the space, smoke and heat rise and it will always collect here at the ceiling, but eventually it will do what we call banking down. It'll start working its way down the wall. Down here, the air is cleaner because there's not as much smoke. You can actually see better because although this smoke is white, smoke in an actual fire is black, and you cannot see through it. So the air is cleaner, the visibility is better, and it's much cooler because heat also rises, but smoke is basically just unburned material, so it's very, very hot as well. So, and it's much cooler down here. So he's going to get down low and he's going to go. He's going to get out of that house. Now, let's say he forgot his wallet or something in the kitchen. Does he go back in to get his wallet? Nope. You never go back in a burning building, not until the fire department has said that it's clear. So upstairs in the bedroom, a couple of things we want to think about. First of all is things like candles. In this instance, right, these are these tall type candles that tip over very easily, right? Like let's say we have some candles burning because they smell nice or they give nice light, but this cat is curious. That's what they're showing here. And if the cat leans across or accidentally bumps this anyway, it could start a fire. We just really don't like open flame in your bedrooms where you're sleeping. So if you're going to use something like this, maybe just those the flameless candles, right, that you can buy that have like battery operated. Those are a much safer option. So let's try to keep candles out of the bedrooms if at all possible. And for sure, never leave a burning candle unattended. Also, when we think about space heaters, like I know it doesn't feel like it right now because it's still summer, but as we get into the winter, right, not all of our houses have the toastiest rooms, and so sometimes we have to add space heaters. And one of the rules about space heaters like this is we need to give a space heater space, meaning 3 feet all the way around it and away from things that could catch on fire. If it's too close, say for instance to these drapes, we could catch that on fire pretty easily. So make sure you give your space heater space, giving it 3 feet all the way around. And that takes away that problem. Okay, in just a few minutes, we're going to run a scenario about having a fire and what we can do to escape it. One of the things we always want to make sure when we're doing this for our own house, right? This is something we would do at home or at school, right? We practice our fire drills. But if we do that at school, why wouldn't we do that at home? And something we can think about when we're looking at doing this at home is to make sure that in every sleeping area, right, which would be considered even a living room, right? Because you'd have sleepovers, so that could be a sleeping area, and your bedrooms, of course. But what makes a sleeping area is that it has 2 ways out. Every sleeping area has to have 2 ways out. And your primary way will always be your door, right? Because we're all creatures of habit. We go in and out the same way. And if we had to, in an emergency, a window would be a second way out. So that would be what would make a sleeping area, is a place that has 2 ways out. Door, window. It's a good idea to have a map, right? And have a plan for how you would get out of your house. Let's say you always go in and out the side door of your house, but for whatever reason there's a fire there. Do you have a backup plan? Okay, well the side door's not available. Can I go out the back? Can I go out the front? Have a plan in mind so that in that emergency, you're not having to think about those things. When you do get out, say there's a fire alarm going off and you smell smoke, you get out of your house. It's important that you have a meeting place, and that meeting place will be someplace outside of your house, in the front of the house, somewhere far enough where you're not in the way of firefighters and all the equipment and engines and stuff that we bring, but someplace where you are we're able to see you and talk to you easily when we arrive on scene. One of the first things we will do when an engine shows up on scene, say it's the middle of the night, we see cars in the front, and there's people standing out in front, we're gonna ask whoever's out front, hey, is everybody out of that house? And if mom or dad are standing there and they're like, 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, we're all out, we go, phew. All we have to do is save your house. We're gonna save your property, protect your home, right? But if we get out there and we say, hey, mom and dad, is everybody out? And they're like, the wife says maybe, oh my gosh, everybody was out, but then my husband ran back there because he thought something happened or whatever. I haven't seen him. That really changes things for us because we want to make sure everybody's out, and now we're going to fight this fire with the possibility that maybe dad's still in there, right? We are worried about life safety. That is our primary concern. Our safety, your safety. So it really changes things. When you get out, stay out, be someplace in front of your home, visible, where we can come talk to you. Very important to us that everybody is safe. Okay, so we're gonna run a little bit of a scenario right now, and we're gonna be up here on this 3rd floor. Right off the bat, I kind of just wanna talk really quick about having an escape ladder. As part of a family plan, right, a family escape plan, when we're talking about having 2 ways out and knowing, backup exits and things like that, if you happen to have an upper story bedroom, right, it might be a good idea to think about getting an escape ladder like this. They're pretty inexpensive. You can buy them anywhere at a Lowe's or Home Depot. I'm not telling you to go out and do that, but it's another tool for your toolbox as far as things we can do to keep our home fire safe and have another means of escape should you have that scenario. So escape ladders are available and handy to have for an upper floor. Okay. Another thing to think about is if there is a fire anywhere, whether it's in an apartment building, in a house, something like this, if we hear a fire alarm going off and we sleep with our doors closed, which is of course the safest way to sleep, one of the things we want to do is we want to check the door before we go out. And the way we would check a door is we would check it with the back side of our hand, and we would feel the door like this. Reason why it's important to do it with the back side of our hand is if we just reach right up and we touch this doorknob and it's very hot, we can burn our hand. It makes it much harder to try to get ourselves out of a building if we're burned or injured, right? Because we've touched a really hot door handle. So we make sure we touch the door with the back of our hand. If it's not hot, then it would be safe to go out that door, right? Get down low, try to stay below the smoke and find your first exit and get out. If we do touch that door with the back of our hand and it is hot, it's not a safe option to go out, so we would need to get to a window. So let's run a little scenario what that looks like here. We're gonna start down here in the closet, right? Remember this little boy down here? And he was messing around with matches and lighters? Not a good day, because today that got away from him. He thought he could control this fire. It got away from him too quickly and it starts to spread. And something we have to think about when we talked about how smoke and heat rise is that if you have a scenario like this where you have fire down low, it can spread very easily to the next floor by superheating this floor above it. And then it can continue on up and on up. And that's why a lot of times fires will end up in the attic because it always wants to go to the highest point. Hopefully, we have working smoke detectors in our house, which are so important, right? That's a call to action. It's telling us to get out right now. I'm gonna turn it off because it's super loud. So as the smoke is building, right, it's coming up here to this bedroom. And so it comes up here. Smoke alarm is going off, right? Call to action. The young man is sleeping in his bed. He hears the fire alarm, right? Or the smoke alarm going off. So he's gonna get down low onto the ground, right? On his knees, and he's gonna come to the door. He's gotta check the door. He wants to feel it with the back of his hand. If it's red like this, right, it means it's hot. So he's going to have to find another way out. He's gonna crawl across his bedroom to this window right here, and he's gonna go out this ladder because he had a plan in place for how to get out safely, and that will help him. And then once he gets out, he's gonna go to his meeting place, someplace out in front of the house where the rest of his family is probably there waiting for him. And the fire department shows up, asks, is everybody out? We say, yes. Let's talk about smoke alarms, right? It's our primary defense. It's really our only tool in our homes, unless we have home sprinklers, right? that gives us an early warning, meaning if there's fire or smoke in our house, these are working and in place. It's going to tell us there's a problem, a call to action, we need to get out, stay out. Where are good places to put smoke alarms? People ask this stuff all the time. Sometimes the thing about smoke alarms is that it can't tell the difference between dust or steam, smoke. It definitely can read smoke, but it also reads dust and steam and even exhaust from a car, right? Anything that can break up the little passageways, the little pathways here for the detectors to go off. So we can also fool them with steam from cooking in a kitchen and things like that. So there are certain places that we do want to put smoke alarms, and there are certain places we really don't want to, because we'd have a lot of false alarms. So let's talk about that. Knowing that a car pulls into a garage, right, it generally puts off exhaust. If we put a smoke alarm in here, would we get a lot of false positives? Probably. This thing would probably be going off all the time. So I don't think the garage is probably the best place for a smoke alarm. What about in an office? We talked about the office maybe being another sleeping room, right? Because it has a doorway and a window, so there's two ways out. So yep, this could definitely be used as a sleeping room. So I think a smoke alarm is a great spot right there. Kitchen. You know, if we put a smoke alarm up in here, this thing would be going off every time we boiled water or something burned in the oven or something. So this would be going off all the time. And I know a lot of times people have them and they're even just outside here in the hallway, but maybe they're a little bit too close. So we burn the popcorn, this thing goes off. One of the issues that we see with that is that sometimes people get annoyed by that. And so what do? They take the battery out. Well, if you take the battery out, what does this do for you? Nothing. This does nothing. If there's no battery in it, it can't work. It can't tell you that there's a fire. So what could we do? Well, let's move the smoke detector away from here. It doesn't have to be right outside the kitchen. Let's get it out into the hallway where it's a little bit further away, right? So we don't disable this. Another thing we could do there are new smoke alarms that have a hush feature, meaning there's a button that you could push. There's one that says test, right? And we test that every month. There's another button that says hush, and what that does is it silences it for 30 seconds or so, long enough for you to open up windows and doors, smoke, push all that smoke out, and it's still working, it's still functioning. It was just quiet for like 30 seconds, long enough for you to get the smoke out. That's another possibility, because that's a very useful smoke alarm in my opinion. So kitchen, not a great place. Hallway, absolutely. And in fact, I like it down here at the bottom of this one too. Bathroom. Would we put a smoke alarm in a bathroom? Probably not. Reason why? Is because every time you take a shower or bath and you fog up that mirror, this thing would be going off all the time. But what about outside in the hallway? Love it. I love a smoke alarm out in the hallway, just outside your sleeping areas. That's ideal. Bedrooms, I think we talked about it, right? It's a sleeping area. We have a door, a window, a bed. We're putting in a smoke alarm. That's a safe place to have one. What about the living room? I'm going to go with, I think that's a good place to have one. And the reason for that is we talked about sleepovers. Definitely has two ways out, a window, a door. I mean, maybe we don't want one right over the fireplace because we probably have a lot of false positives, but maybe a little bit out of the way where we wouldn't have that going off all the time. That would be useful. We check smoke alarms. They say to check them once a month. At the very minimum, we should be checking them at least twice a year. We've always used the idea of when we spring forward and when we fall back, right? So when we do the time changes, those are great times to change the batteries even, to make sure you have working smoke detectors all the time. So that's a great thing to do. If you're home though, and you happen to hear that little tiny chirp, you're like, what is that chirp? And you're walking around the house trying to figure out what that is. That little chirping sound is the battery telling you it's low and this smoke alarm is about to no longer work. So you've got to change the battery in the one, whatever one it is that's making that funny little chirping noise. That's a signal for you. Carbon monoxide alarms, not everybody knows where to put those. It's kind of a new thing. If you have a house like, for instance, this one where it has gas appliances, It has a fireplace. It has a gas cooktop. It has an attached garage, meaning the garage is part of the main house. This house would need carbon monoxide alarms because these things, right, all produce smoke, and smoke is carbon monoxide, which is a poisonous gas. So we want to have some way of detecting that, and that's what these are there for. We probably don't want it in the garage, but someplace just outside. Where on the wall, it really doesn't matter. Some of them plug into outlets. Some of them are combined with smoke alarms. You just have to follow the manufacturer's directions on the one that you buy and place it where it tells you to, because they're all just slightly different. Okay. So I know we've covered a lot of things about what we can do to prevent fires in a home. And when we're talking about this and we're talking about all these potentials for fire, they're all things that we can do to prevent them. And if these are things that we're doing to prevent fires, right, then the likelihood of us having a fire in our home is very slim. And in fact, it really is. We have so many people in this valley, and we don't have a ton of fires all the time because we have a lot of people being very safe around fires and things like that. And by learning these things and having this knowledge and these skills in your head right now will help prevent these in the future, so that you don't ever have any of these issues in your home. All right, so to sort of recap some of the key points as far as our hazard house here goes and what we can do to keep our homes most fire safe. One of the points that we want to make sure that everybody's thinking about is making sure that we have those working smoke alarms. I know we talk about it a lot, but it really is our number one defense. It gives us that early warning in the event that there is a fire, so that we can get out early and get out to safety. And as far as getting out to safety, it's important that we have our meeting place, right, where we all gather outside the home, in front of the house, so that we, as firefighters, come in, make sure that everyone's out, and we're happy, high five. All lives are saved here. Okay, also another thing we want to do is, as we have fire escape plans for our schools, I think it's a really great idea for you to go home and draw up a plan for your home, right? Why not have a fire escape plan for home? Identifying in each of your sleeping areas 2 ways out, your door, your windows, emergency exits if you need that, right? And then identifying where your home fire safety is. So making sure you have 2 ways out, windows open. Sometimes we paint our houses and those windows don't open easily, so it's a good idea to practice that. Just things that we can do to make ourselves as comfortable where we are in the event of an emergency. Okay, so a common question that I get is when we talk about getting out in a fire, right? We tell everybody to get out and stay out. But what happens if you get outside and you're like, oh my gosh, my favorite something is in my bedroom? Or like for me, I keep one of my little dogs in a crate in my little side room, right? What if I got outside and I forgot to let my dog Augie outside? Do I go in and do I let him out? The answer is no. You never ever go back in, not for anything. But what you can do is you can tell a firefighter outside, hey, my dog is in this room, or my something special is in this room. Tell us a location, tell us where they are, but tell a firefighter, and don't you go back in, not for anything. We understand that pets are like family. We all have them. You know, I have my critters. All of those guys, they're all brothers, they're fathers, they're aunties, right? We all have family and we all have our pets, and we know how important they are to you as well. So we try to save all life. So make sure you tell a firefighter, don't ever go back inside a burning building.
to the meeting place.